Hey everybody, this is Kate Furman, and I hope that you can hear me okay. These things are always a little bit tricky at first. I am here today to demonstrate a little bit of what we do in my nature drawing class, which is on Monday mornings from 9:30 to 12:30 a.m. So the next session starts back, I think, fall 1 and then fall 2. So please come and join me. So I'm just going to show you one of the things we do. Usually in the class, we work in pencil, we work in black pen, we work in a black ink wash, we work in charcoal, and we work in a combination of all of the above. So today I'm just going to show you how to do pencil. So whenever you go out to buy pencils, you can always just get a regular old HB number 2 pencil, and that's totally fine. But you can also buy a pack of pencils. So to get a pack of pencils, they're going to come and they all have different numbers. So 3B is one of them. But so the pack of pencils is, if you have your HB pencil right in the middle, that is like your number 2 pencil. It's like the one you used to use in school. And then if you go this direction, you have a 2B, 4B, a 6B, etc. If you go this direction, you have 2H, 4H, 6H, that way. So what this means is that these are getting softer, these are getting harder. So the softer pencils, they can get darker, but they have less of a fine line. The harder pencils are usually lighter, but they have a very hard lead, so it's harder to blend with them. You'll find your own preference as to what you like to work with, but a lot of times I'll tell people to start with the HB because that's where you're the most comfortable. I personally like to use the 3B a lot. That's usually my go-to favorite. So once you get your pencils for your drawing, you want some kind of eraser. I like white erasers, or even just the end of a mechanical pencil is all I'm going to use today. And then you need paper. So I always recommend feeling your paper before you start drawing. So this is Bristol board. It's one of my favorite just plain old drawing papers. I like it because it's a little bit heavier. So if you do have to erase, it's not going to tear the paper up as easily. It has a nice thickness. It's also harder to fold it and crinkle it. So I like to use Bristol board. So today what I'm going to show you is how I would draw just a couple of objects that I found in nature. So this is a shell and a dried up starfish, and I got both of these on the Baja California coast. So I like to pick up little nature pieces whenever I travel, and we have a big box full of them in the classroom that we often draw from. And you're also welcome to bring in your own objects or bring in photographs. I'm really flexible. But for today, I'm just going to use these two to show you how I would start to draw them. So whenever you're drawing, I want you to remember 2 things. You should always draw from general to specific, and from light to dark. So the reason that is that if you start drawing generally, you can start with what's called a gesture drawing, which I'm going to show you in just a minute. And that will help you figure out where you want to draw on the page and to make sure you like the composition. And then you slowly develop and slowly add in the details once you're sure everything is where it's supposed to be and in proportion. From light to dark, kind of for the same reason. So if you put your drawing down and it's not where you want it to be, you want to be able to erase it pretty easily. And then so what we do is we put it down really lightly, and then slowly and gradually we'll build it up until it's darker and hopefully realistic if that's the look you're going for. So I'll go ahead and now start kind of showing you what I would do. So it's a little awkward with this camera stand here, so excuse me for kind of reaching in a weird way. But I like to put my objects on some kind of surface where I can see them. So this is a white surface, so it's totally fine. If you wanted a darker surface, you could draw it on a darker surface, but that would very much change the drawing. That makes it where the starfish is a lot lighter than the background. What I'm going to do is have my starfish to be not a ton lighter than my background, and maybe even darker than my background. So if we put it on this paper, you can see that it's actually darker. So you want to arrange your objects where you like them, and then we're going to do what's called a gesture drawing. So you can start with any pencil you want. I happen to have the 3B. I don't like to overly overly think about it, but I like having a softer pencil. So again, a 2 or a 3B. And I'm just going to slowly draw where I think that they're going to go. And one thing I really like about drawing nature is that, in my opinion, since I'm not a scientific illustrator, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just trying to get the gist of what the object is. So in this starfish, it's really cool because it's just this weird shape that just shriveled up on the beach, and it has a lot of personality, and I just kind of want to play with that. And as an artist, you have what's called artistic license. So that gives you the right to use something like this as your inspiration, but then to take your own spin on it. So if you wanted to exaggerate the legs, you could, or if you want to draw it exactly like you see it, you can do that too. So I put a very light starfish down, and now I'm going to do a light shell. So what I'm doing now is really called a gesture drawing, and all that means is that I'm just lightly putting these objects down so I can see where they are, and then I can make them a little bit better, a little bit more specific as I go. So right now is the time that I would start to check proportions on things, and I can just kind of eyeball it. So to me, I can look at the height of the shell in relation to the height of the starfish and see that the starfish, from where I'm sitting, is a little bit longer this direction, and it's a little bit taller this direction. So I can come down here and check, and it looks like I kind of made my starfish too tall. So I'm just going to kind of make a little tick mark where I think it probably should have ended based on where the shell is. So I'm going to shorten my starfish, and then I can check the width. The widths look pretty equal from where I'm sitting. So I think if anything, maybe I make the shell a little bit shorter this direction. And then you can start to check the angles of things by literally taking your pencil and lining up the angle of that starfish leg with your paper. And this leg isn't angled enough, so I'm gonna do a little mark so I can see where it needs to go. And I'm just gonna pick a few of the more important legs and then go from there. But if you want your piece to be really realistic, you can go through and measure every single part of it. But again, for this, I'm not gonna be overly worried. So since that leg was pretty off, I'm gonna just erase it a little bit and then start just putting it back in. All these little tick marks that you accumulate, I just draw right over them for now. And as long as they're nice and light, you can erase them later. And so now I'm gonna just start defining the shape a little bit more. And then with pencil, you can really use the side of your pencil to put down a ground. And I like to go ahead at this point, once I have the shapes in there, I like to go ahead and put in a ground over the whole object. And this is because I want to be able to see that this is a form and not a shape. So a shape is two-dimensional. A shape is a circle. A form is a sphere. So to make these look like forms, they're going to require shading. Sometimes I'll use my fingers. Some teachers tell you to do this, and some teachers don't. I was taught that you have your fingers as a tool, so you should use them. So I like to do my fingers just in this beginning phase so that I can start to blend it in and start to see that there's objects on this paper. So now I'll just keep slowly defining the shapes a little at a time and adding in some details. You can start putting in some of the contour lines, which are the lines that make up all the details and make up all the shapes. You don't have to put in every one, you can kind of imply them. some of these areas that are a little bit darker, I'll start shading it a little bit more. I'm not going to keep you here all day, so I'm not going to take forever on it, on any step. But if you want something to be really realistic, you could spend a lot longer. If you want it to be more simplified, you can spend less time. I like drawing these little objects from nature because they make you really look hard at them and realize what do they actually look like versus what do you think they look like, because every shell actually looks very different. Every leaf will look very different. And if you just draw a leaf like you think it's going to look, it's not going to be what you're seeing at all. I always try to work the whole page. You want to develop the whole page at once and not just any one detail, because you want the whole thing to kind of grow as one. I'm going to kind of start shading in these areas that I'm looking at that are darker. So when I'm doing that, what I'm always looking at is what's darker than what. So looking at relation. So is the shell is lighter than the shadow underneath it, but the shadow underneath it is darker than the paper. And then you can look right here. So this arm of the starfish is lighter than that arm of the starfish. So I'm always looking at the relationships between objects to see which is lighter, what's darker, what's lighter, what's darker. And it's just to me, it's a very meditative process to draw, to just kind of be one with the object and not worry about it too much. A lot of times people get really caught up in being scared to draw, being scared to put that mark down. And at the end of the day, to me, it's just a piece of paper. You can erase it and you can start over. It's just about practice and about enjoying it. I'll go ahead and get some of these tick marks off. Those are 2B, 4B. I might try my 4B pencil. It's a little bit softer, so I'll be able to shade it a little bit easier. You can see it'll get a little bit darker. So usually in my drawing classes that I teach at GCCA, we always will usually start with some pencil drawing and really focusing on textures. And then we end up adding in some just pen and ink drawing, just with pens, which is my favorite. There's a black pen. And then we usually add in some black ink washes, which are really fun. And you do your underdrawing in pen, and then you do really light washes over them and build it up really slowly. So whatever media we're using, we're always kind of building it up really slowly and working a little at a time. And then we usually end up doing some large charcoal drawings, which are really fun because charcoal is a media that allows you to get really big, which I think it's a lot of fun. It's a challenge for some people, and it's really enjoyable to draw something this small and then to take the same object and make it huge. And you get a very different feel, which I really like. Having a hard time getting my hand where I want it to go because of the camera, but we're making it work. So again, I'm kind of implying some of these shell lines. You really don't have to show every single line that's in the piece. You can show whatever you want to. I'm definitely a fan of mixing medias too, so you can always mix pencil and charcoal, or pencil and pen, or pen and watercolor. Any of them really are fun. One thing we haven't yet talked about are some of the shadows. So I'm gonna gesture draw in some of the shadows right now, where I'm just putting just a really light idea of where the shadows are, and then just to make sure I like where they are, and then I can just slowly come back and build them in. I have y'all filming on my phone, so I'm not seeing if y'all have any questions. If I'm missing them, I'm sorry. But you can always email me later. Kate@katefurman.com if you want to. If you want to go to my website, it is also katefurman.com. And as of right now, you'll see mostly my jewelry, but I'm getting my drawings on there soon. And I actually just illustrated my first children's book for an author out of Asheville. So I'll be announcing that via my website and my email list in the near future. We're hoping it's going to be published sometime this fall. And all the drawings I did in it are pen and ink. So they were challenging, but I really enjoyed it. If you're wanting to learn to draw, I always recommend just bring a tiny little sketchbook with you. Those little moleskin ones are my favorites. And that way, if you're waiting on a table at dinner, you can just take it out and just draw a little bit. If you're traveling, I love carrying the sketchbooks as my travel journal. I've never been as much of a writer, so I remember things visually. So I can look back at my old sketchbooks and remember where I was and what I did and who I was with. It's crazy how much more you remember when you were really in the moment drawing it. Right now I'm at my studio, which is not too far from GCCA. I'm in the village of West Greenville, so if y'all are local, you should definitely come check out our area. Check out the art center. They are open for First Friday tonight, but you do have to have an appointment because of all the COVID. But there's a brand new show. I believe it's the member showcase, and it's really cool because there's tons of different art from lots of different medias and all different artists, and it's really good. It's a really fun show to see because of all the variety in it. I will not be open personally for First Friday. I do most of my business online, although I am open by appointment. And you can book an appointment with me online on my website. So you'll notice all artists have different styles. Some draw really realistically, some draw really simply, some draw really abstractly. You'll just start to develop your own style, or maybe one day you draw one way and another day you draw a different way, just based on your mood. Today I'm trying to do a kind of hurried, realistic drawing, but I like line. I like line in my designs, and I like line in my drawings, and I like line in the art I buy. I like line pretty much everywhere. I like the aesthetic of line. So I always end up mixing in a lot more line into my shading. I think it gives it variety. One thing I haven't talked about is that we want to try to avoid just having outlines of things. You want to make, so an outline being, if you had just a big circle, that would be outlined. But when you have a really light circle and then you're building up the values, instead of an outline, now you're starting to get a form with an edge. So that's what we're really trying to do. So sometimes you'll have a little line and you can kind of bring that line in, just kind of shade it in so that it's not too outliney. Little sections can be outlined. It's a good way to emphasize them, but not the whole thing. Just kind of basic rules of drawing if you're trying to draw something realistically. If it's whatever part's closer to you is going to have more detail. Whatever's farther away from you is going to have less detail. I tell people to think like a macro lens camera when they're drawing. If you kind of exaggerate that detail up front, you can really kind of help show that something is, coming closer to you or receding away from you. I think my niece Eva might be watching. If you are, hey Eva. I hope you're enjoying it. So once you start getting closer to the end of your drawing and you kind of put you kind of start putting in your darker darks, that's what really kind of helps pop the image off the page. But another kind of rule of drawing is if you have your drawing and here's your scale of this is black, this is white, right in the middle you have what's called middle gray. Only 1% of your drawing should be black, and only 1% of your drawing should be white. Everything else should be in all of these grays. So you can save in pencil, you can save and come back in at the end and get that tiny bit of dark and that tiny bit of light because you can erase it out. Some medias you can't erase, so you have to plan ahead. So that being like pen and ink or any kind of ink wash, you really have to plan ahead, and you can't add the white back. You have to just save it from the beginning. Right now I'm also teaching a ink and watercolor class, but next session I believe it's just going to be a workshop and not a whole class. We'll just be doing the nature drawing as a whole class. Something that always helps drawings is having variety. So having a variety of line, having a variety of textures, having a variety of lights and darks. It always makes a drawing more interesting. And come through and start erasing some of these lines that are kind of these smudged areas up here. And you'll see how it really starts to kind of pop out off the page. So it's starting to get there, little by little. I'm just gonna keep adding details, adding some, at this point I can really add in the details, like the more specific areas that I haven't included yet. Whenever you look at the edges of something, they're never just one line, they're actually two. So, that's actually a whole plane along the edge of that shell. It's not just a line, it's two lines that show the edge of it. Another thing I always tell people when they're drawing nature is that there's no straight lines in nature. If you look closely, it's not straight. Straight lines imply geometric, imply humans, not nature. Another way I shade sometimes is by doing what's called cross-hatching. So, earlier I was really putting my pencil on the side and just shading, but you can also build up value by cross-hatching, or there's hatching and then cross-hatching or any combination of it. I try to avoid scribbling. I don't scribble very often. Every now and then for texture I will, but you don't want to overdo it, in my opinion. This pencil is a 3B, so it literally doesn't get as dark as that pencil I was using earlier. When you start to use the different pencils, you see the difference that this 4B, it wore down really easily. It's not very sharp anymore, but it also made a thicker line, but a darker line. So you can draw with anything, but you can also start to see the benefits of different media for different things. So we have a lot of fun in class, and if you're interested in taking it, we have people who have taken it a whole bunch of times, like 10 times, and we have people each session that are new and never taken it before, have never drawn before, so really a whole bunch of different levels. So if you've never drawn before, don't worry about it. You come on and you will be just fine. And if you draw all the time and you just want to maybe pick up a few new ideas and just have a deadline to draw, come join us that way too. So either one. So we can keep going for quite a while on this, but I'm not going to keep you all for too much longer. I don't think I see if there's any questions. If anyone has any, let me know. I think you could type them in. I might see them. I think I should see them if you do. And then I always like to emphasize intersecting points. So anywhere where objects overlap or where objects intersect, those are the areas that I think need the most attention. They need the most sharpness. And it's because you want the viewer to be able to see what's going on there. There shouldn't be confusion. So if you kind of go back and hit those places that are overlapping or intersecting, at the end with a little bit more detail, a little bit more crispness, that usually helps. At the end of all my classes, we always walk around and look at everyone's, and we found that to be really helpful, because then you kind of get to see how other people handle the same subject matter. Because different people draw in different ways, and sometimes just seeing how other people do it really helps you get new ideas or kind of see what you could try differently next time. So we always have a very positive critique at the end, where you can always see the great spots in everyone's drawings. You can always see we all have areas that need to be improved, so we just go around and look at both of those. So yeah, this is my in progress drawing. Hey Eva, you're cute. Eva again, she's my little niece. She's gonna be an artist one day. Just like her daddy. And her aunt and her grandmom. Thanks, Joni, I appreciate it. I miss you. I miss seeing everybody. I know we all feel the same way. Someday things will be normal again. And when I'm adding in the little bits of texture, I don't do the whole thing. You can just imply it on little parts of it, and then you get the idea for the rest of it. So those of you who are familiar with GCCA or have been around it a lot have probably met my mom, Linda, and you probably know that Linda is fighting pancreatic cancer right now, And so if asking all of you to please send a warm thought into the universe, to whatever you worship, whoever you look up to help my mama. Does anyone have any questions? So my nature drawing class is on Monday mornings from 9:30 until 12:30. And we usually kind of stop drawing around 12 and do our little critique. And we would love to have you come check it out sometime. And you can sign up for the class at the Greenville Center for Creative Arts webpage. And I hope to see you all there. So thank you all so much for watching. This is what I kind of ended up with, my starfish and my shell. So I hope it maybe gave you a little inspiration that you can find things to draw everywhere. And we have a collection of dried up leaves and rocks and dead bugs and pine cones and acorns and everything. So we just kind of gather little pieces here and there and bring them into our giant box and draw them, and we have a lot of fun. You can always come back in with your mechanical pencil if you want to add just a little, like, crispen things up a little bit. Has a nice sharp tip. I'm all for some mechanical pencils. But yeah, so if you have any questions, you can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. My Instagram is at Kate Furman Jewelry and Art. You can email me through my website, which is katefurman.com, or email me directly at kate@katefurman.com. And I am happy to answer questions and get to know you, and I hope that this maybe inspired you a little bit and that you will come and join us sometime. So would love to see you. Love you, Eva. Thanks for watching. All right, everybody. See you next time. Get a little closer view. And happy First Friday.